Now we will say that what society is offering to people today is a placebo. You have to turn the tables on them. Yeah.
I should take time to refute.
We're not into arguing, but if someone is actually inquiring and it's possible that the discussion will lead to something constructive, you can discuss. Otherwise, we're not a debate society. Best with such persons, just pop a samosa in their mouth. So. I can't say anything more. The trick of society today is how to get people to live and work hard, all under control, even though there's no meaning to life. There's no meaning to material life. But still, you want people to work hard, and you want to control them, so you've got to get them caught up in the temporary stimulations and entertainments, so much so that they forget they have no meaning, they have no purpose. You see, the greatest resource to control is not natural resources, wood or oil or uranium or titanium. The greatest resource is human beings. So if you can control human beings to become willing slaves, then you're successful materially. If you can get everyone to buy in to the system so that they're working hard and then spending the money on entertainment diversions to relieve themselves from working hard, you can make profit both ways. You exploit them at work and exploit them when they're so-called having fun. Doesn't get any better than that, does it? So you're a smart business person. Where's our business person? Hyman, Freddie, are you here? There he is. That's great. You know, that's smart business, right? You make money when they work and make money when they play too. Exploit them at work, exploit them when they think they're having fun. Doesn't get any better than that. So the greatest resource, the greatest natural resource is human beings. How do you control them? How do you milk them? How do you exploit them? The most brilliant system for control was not the old Soviet Union. Everything was by force. No, the most brilliant system for control comes from the USA. You are free. You have a vote. Look at how many TV channels you can choose from. Just like when I was a little boy, when New York City became the first city in the USA to add 2 sports teams for every sport, 2 professional sport teams, because such a big population. So, wow, how great is this? 2 baseball teams, 2 basketball teams, 2 football teams. Wow, this is the greatest place. So they convince people that they are free. Just like the motto for the USA is, land of the free, home of the brave. To convince people that they are free while totally getting them to work hard and then spend the money on things that you control. Wow, that is brilliant. Convince people that they are free while totally shackling them. That's the most brilliant system of control. Not do it by brute force. That was the old Soviet Union. Better is to control everyone's minds by the media. You want to enjoy. This is how you enjoy. Everyone is enjoying it this way. You are not. What's going on with you? Everyone's having all the material happiness and you're not having. You can see the change in New Zealand. When I first came here in New Zealand, 1993, there was a sense of innocence. But then the Hollywood movies came in, the Hollywood television, and disrupted that sense of innocence. I can see instead of people becoming happier, they're filled with more anxiety. Happiness used to be, go for a walk in the beautiful nature. That's still there to some degree, but more, superseding that, surpassing that, is happiness comes from sitting in front of the screen and just watching. Happiness has become flat screen. And then you become so addicted to happiness on the screen that you have to have your smartphone with you and watch videos and everything on your smartphone. Your brain can't exist without being stimulated by some material diversions. The so-called technological advancement has become the greatest method ever for controlling people's minds. Now, human beings are so media dependent on the internet. They're on the internet more than television now. Streaming this, streaming that. You all know what it's like, those who do book distribution on the streets. Half the people are walking around staring at a phone. So just think, if you were a demoniac controller, you would recognize this is the greatest method to control people. Just control the media and you control their minds. Because they're so hooked on the media. Never before has it been so easy. You don't need a military army. You need media experts. Control over all the media. And then you control what people think, what they know. So that is the most effective way how to enslave people, by making them think they're free. Look at all the colors you can choose from. Even the most insignificant things, like cases for your mobile phone. They have shops dedicated to mobile phone cases. Pick out the color that matches your personality. Not only do you pick out the color that matches your personality, but get cases that can change their colors every day to match your mood for that day. You're free. So, People may think they're smart, but most of them are sucked into this notion that you display your individuality by consumer choice. The more consumer choices there are, the more free you are. When actually, social researchers have shown that the more consumer choice there is, the more anxiety you're in. My God, did I pick the right one? I got an orange phone case. Oh no, that's not my mood. What color did you get? I got a purple phone case. Oh, maybe I should have got that one. So all this profusion of consumer choice is actually causing stress and even depression. I explained this, discussed this in a book I wrote that's published by the BBT. It's at the printers now, so you'll probably get it if you want it sometime the end of January. It's called Hiding an Unnatural Happiness. So it discusses this kind of research. All right, looks like our clientele has trickled in. So we can begin. Just a short presentation tonight before Kirtan. Every year we try to remind ourselves about the milk situation. And this is an individual choice I want you to keep in mind. We don't want anyone thinking that this is some absolute requirement, like the regular principles, that you should abstain from slaughterhouse milk. Now that is your individual choice. It is not a requirement. I myself, because I do so much outreach, I don't want to be cast as a hypocrite. Oh, the Krishna devotees, they talk about the cow and how the cow is so dear to Krishna, but yet, when it comes to their milk choices, they're very eager to drink milk from slaughtered cows. Cows that will be slaughtered. So I myself don't have a defense for that. And I don't want to try to touch my nose by and try to come up with some kind of defense. You know how sometimes it's said that the slaughtered cow will get benefit because the milk is offered, its milk is offered to Krishna. But that's, I've explained before, that's not how modern dairies work. It's all centralized. So tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of cows, all their milk is blended at one dairy. But sometimes the argument is put to me, but that's all right, even if just one microscopic part of a drop of milk from one cow it's part of that blend from hundreds of thousands of cows. Cows gets benefit. You know, it's really stretching it. So I give the example. Next time you go to India, to Vrindavan, to the Jamuna River, to Mayapur, where the Ganga is, get a vial, a small container of Jamuna water or Ganga water, and then make a plan somehow to slip it into the central water system of Auckland or Wellington. Everyone will be bathing in the Ganga or Jamuna. Reminds you of during the countercultural days, the hippie revolutionaries would make plans how to slip a vial of LSD into the whole central water system of the city. So yeah, okay then. With the same logic, you can say, it's not the quantity, remember. If just every one of the millions of people in the city, someone that gets a sub-microscopic drop of Jamuna water. Wow. So I always point out, this is stretching things quite a bit. Or another example I give. You can go to Auckland and walk on a street where Srila Prabhupada walked. There must still be some microscopic dust particles. You'll benefit. In fact, why you? No doubt, since his time, the millions of people who walked on that street, they're probably getting some microscopic dust particles that still are there from 45 years ago. Better we use our intelligence to come up with ways how to solve the milk problem, rather than come up with all these intricate, complicated backflips which stretch the credibility of our bhakti philosophy. As I explained before, most devotees who say this, that, well, the milk from the cow, even though the cow is being slaughtered, it's going to be offered on our altar to Krishna. They don't understand the dairy industry. They have an idea that there's still Farmer Joe over there, and he has some cows, and the milk from that one cow that you see out the window, that is winding up on your altar. That's 50 years ago. It's all so centralized. Even, I know, for example, in Canada, in the whole country of Canada, there's like 8 dairies for the whole country. Oh, milk, hundreds of thousands of cows goes to each one. So rather than scratch our heads and try to come up with brilliant answers like the slaughtered cow gets benefit, we don't know which cow. There's such a merge of hundreds of thousands of cows. Why not just try to come up with a solution? And be honest that we have not properly applied ourselves to coming up with a solution. And I say we, I'm speaking about devotees of Krishna in general. There's no doubt that cow protection changes all of human society. Just this one thing changes completely how society operates. Labor is required. Proper land use is required. Attitudes have to change. So here in New Zealand, we have makeshift solutions. Yes. Some devotees have private herds of dairy cows, which is nice. We don't have what Srila Prabhupada wanted. The first person, as you know, who came to New Zealand to bring Krishna consciousness here in the early 70s, Prabhupada told him, when you get there, don't get a temple in the city, get a farm and start Varnashram Dharma. New Zealand is a first-class agricultural country. Those are his words. milk famous throughout the world due to its quality, due to the, he didn't say, but we can understand, it's due to the purity of the environment, and also the fact that the cows are grass-fed, not grain-fed. They're outside, fresh air, fresh grass. Although slowly even that's starting to change a bit. So therefore he gave that instruction, get a farm. Because Prabhupada's vision of Varnashram Dharma was that it begins with the land. Therefore, in his last months of physical presence in this world, he was saying, I want to go to Gita Nagari and show how to live off the land. How to start Varnashram Dharma by showing how to live off the land. To try for the big solution, we're sending willing devotees to our sister project in the USA, Gita Nagari Farm, trying to maintain what Srila Prabhupada established. He told us, if you can't increase, at least maintain what I've done. So he was very proud of Gita Nagari, that the cows were giving so much milk. When he traveled throughout India, he would tell the Indians, at our Gita Nagari farm, our cows are producing so much milk. He would quote numbers. So we have various ways to approach the situation. We have each devotee's individual conscience, how you're going to respond to the slaughterhouse milk situation. And it's up to each individual. I know some mothers have children, things like that, and so we leave it to the individual. And we have the private cowherd approach, which is providing the milk for this festival.
Hare Krishna.
And we don't have the actual farm project approach that Srila Prabhupada requested in this country. So therefore although we don't get the milk from Gita Nagari, to push on Prabhupada's vision, we supply some devotees. Because this is how the International Society for Krishna Consciousness works. It's an international society, so we can move resources around. In New Zealand, so many devotees like to farm, but there's no farm. In the USA, there are farms, but the Americans, no intention to farm. Everything is either IT, finance. Nothing to do with farms. So in an international society, we can look at the big picture and move resources. Resources means capital, human power. Of course, you can't move land. So we can't move Gita Nagari here. But looking at the big picture of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, we can move manpower there. Woman power there. Thought you were going to catch me, huh? My point is that the milk issue is a big issue. Whatever your individual choice is, you should think about it. We're not making judgments on whichever way you choose. We don't want anyone feeling pressured or outcast. But just think about it. There are some, as you know, GBC leaders in this Krishna Conscious Society who feel very strongly about this, and so we abstain from milk that's not from protected cows. That's an individual choice. Don't require everyone else to do that. The end of November, something astonishing happened in New Zealand. On primetime television, on a Sunday, there was an expose of cruelty to cows, and especially calves. And some of the book distributors during the Prabhupada Marathon this month, like Dayamaya Devidasi, they were telling me how they met so many persons who had seen this expose. Brahmacharis also, yes. And many of them were upset. Many of them couldn't care less, but many of them were very upset. What impresses me the most about this expose is, first of all, the intelligence behind it, and secondly, the empathy is too light of a word. The feeling that these quote-unquote non-devotees had about the horrors being perpetrated on the cows and calves. Here we are. We're followers of Govinda, the one who gives pleasure to the cows and the senses. Gopal, the protector of the cows. And yet, these non-bhaktas, non-practitioners, are showing such compassion and such sensitivity. I found it embarrassing. And they were so focused with their intelligence on the abomination of the situation. They were unshakable. Who knows what else they do in their life? That's not the point. Often, our devotees some will counter, oh, yeah, but they're against the cow slaughter, but we know, they're probably drinking, or they're probably gambling, or living with their girlfriend. That is not the point. When you watch this, I want you to feel, and some of you have seen it. How many of you seen it before? Raise your hands. Yes, at least half of you. I want you to feel their commitment to our issue. That's what strikes me. They've taken our issue and they're championing it. This is what I find quite moving. Let's hear, before we watch it, some words from Srila Prabhupada. I always carry these words with me. He's asking for an emotional, deep gut response, in addition to a response to your intelligence. He also wants the basic human response. He says, the cow is supplying the most nutritious food, milk, and in exchange you are cutting her throat. How can you be happy? How can I be happy now? What happens to the cow? That happens to the cow. I got my life. No, you're being presented with a holistic, interlocking view of existence. How can you be happy taking milk and then cutting her throat? He continues. So if we, human beings, if we forget even ordinary mercy, not anything transcendental, we forget ordinary mercy, compassion, and gratefulness, then what kind of human life is that? Ordinary mercy, compassion, and gratefulness. Nothing divine, nothing beyond material nature, just In other words, he's saying human beings are acting like less than animals. He goes on to say, you should be ashamed. Even if you have no human feelings, you should still be ashamed. So if the human society has not this kind of simple brain for understanding this, then where is the brain? The fact is that comfort for the brahmanas is secondary, and comfort for the cows is Krishna's first concern. When you're offering food, you say, Namo Brahmanya Devaya, Go Brahmanya Hitaya Cha. Krishna gives protection to Go Brahmanya, the cows and the brahmanas, but first the cows. All right, let's watch. And even though you've seen it before, I want you to focus on the embarrassment of these non-bhaktas taking an issue so dear to us deeply to heart. Just wait till they all settle down, please. Naturally, you have to begin the news with some consumerism, otherwise it's not news. Do you have a car like that? All right, everyone's settled. I think we need to block that light there. Thank you. Okay.
Kia ora, I'm Miriam Makamo. When we sit down to dinner or drink a glass of milk, we probably don't think too much about where it came from. But animal rights campaigners have declared war on our dairy industry, alleging cruelty. The evidence, they say, is in hundreds of hours of covert filming, and they want to attack the industry where it'll hurt most, on international markets. Tonight, we reveal the footage which activist group Farm Watch claims shows deliberate cruelty against helpless animals. Here's Ian Sinclair.
When you drive through the countryside, it all looks idyllic and peaceful. But it's only when you look closer that you see that what we think is normal farming is absolute cruelty.
It should be pretty obvious, really, but to most of us city slickers, it isn't. In order to make the milk for your latte or your cup of tea, a cow has to get pregnant each season. But that raises the question, what happened to the calf that this milk was made for? To find out, the animal rights group Farm Watch set up hidden cameras to film numerous ordinary dairy farms across the Waikato.
For years we've been hearing stories from people in farming communities about calves and trucks, calves being left on the side of the road.
Farm Watch wanted to track the fate of those animals known as bobby calves.
We needed to start using hidden cameras in order to find out how they were treating these animals when they thought no one was watching.
Have you got a thing about farmers then, dairy farmers?
I've got absolutely nothing against dairy farmers personally. I know they work incredibly long hours in very difficult conditions and that many of them end up earning less than the minimum wage. So this expose isn't vindictive, it isn't aimed at hurting dairy farmers. I don't want to hurt farmers, but I do want to expose what goes on these farms.
Over months, they filmed the calves from birth.
So we've got footage of the cow being born in a muddy field, and then we've got the footage of the farmers coming and separating the calf from the mother. You see a farmer interacting with his stock, and you think nothing more of it. But when you look closely, you see that it's a farmer taking a baby away from its mother on the day it's been born. All dairy farms separate calves from their mothers, and that is inherent cruelty on every single dairy farm in the country.
So we showed that footage to Professor Clyde Phillips, cow behaviour expert from Queensland University.
Yeah, the cow is clearly distressed by removal of her calf. The calf is being physically manhandled in a way which is, I think, quite unacceptable on a farm, being kicked and pushed, and the cow is responding to that.
This Oxford graduate has made cow behaviour a science.
We're now finding that when we look at the emotional lives of cows, there is scientific evidence saying that the animals are not being well treated.
On another farm again, a scene that will play out millions of times each year. Just hours after birth, bobby calves taken from their mothers.
Firstly, you've got locomotion. The cows will continue walking after the calves. You've got vocalization as well, bellowing for probably at least a couple of days. They will feel that separation anxiety.
See, the cow walks over to see what's going on, turns its back, and now its calf is gone.
Yes, I guess she didn't see that coming, unfortunately.
Yet another farm, and Farm Watch films calves a few days old, ready for shipment to slaughter.
It's poignant that these are baby animals who have just been put in a crate in front of a farm and they're going to slaughter. That in and of itself I found upsetting.
While the milk meant for them is destined for the market, these calves have become a byproduct of the dairy industry. Each season, 2 million calves like these will head for slaughter.
We came back later in the afternoon expecting to see that these calves had gone, and what we found was that these calves were still there. And it was a very hot day, and these calves had gone from being bright and interacting with us to lying on the bottom of the crate almost dead. These calves have been left at the side of the road in the hot sun all day without food or water or shelter of any kind.
Yeah, they're showing clear evidence of distress. We saw one there, eyes closed, head hooked back to the thorax. That's a condition that we call learned helplessness. The calf is saying, can't cope with this anymore. I'm going to try and shut it out. I'll close my eyes and just hope something happens to return my mother or return me to more normal circumstances.
Farmers would say that footage was selective, that many farmers are good to their animals.
Well, I can tell you that we filmed every single calf in a crate that we saw, and we've given to you many hours of footage, and we haven't edited that.
The video features the dead as well as the dying.
We haven't gone through and selected the worst bits. I believe that the way that all of these calves are being treated is bad enough that the New Zealand public would be shocked.
At another farm, another example. At 5:34 a.m, these calves are left in a crate dropped outside the farm gate. As the camera shows, left without milk in the sun for hours.
So you're both destroying that very close bond between the mother and the calf, but also removing the calf's source of nutrients, removing the water supply.
A truck finally arrives at 1:55, almost 8.5 hours later.
And then on top of that, you've got the mistreatment and the manhandling, throwing of calves, for instance.
The Farm Watch footage has numerous shots of live calves being thrown in different locations around the Waikato.
The overcrowding on trucks and the long transportation times, all giving a picture of really quite severe stress to the calf at a very early age.
Next up, final destination, this slaughterhouse. Is anyone enforcing our laws on animal cruelty? They made that footage available 2 months ago. They've heard nothing back.
We have initiated an investigation, and I'm not going to comment further on our processes around that investigation.
And the threat of a global campaign against New Zealand dairy. Fonterra fronts up.
Yeah, pretty disappointed if that's how the dairy industry is going to be portrayed.
I wanted to make a statement and to let people know what's happening.
We're about to meet what might be the luckiest bobby calves in the land.
These are all ex-bobby calves, and they've all been rescued.
Now, some of them look pretty young. Deep in the Waikato, Lindley Tulloch has set up a bobby calf sanctuary.
I was aware that calves get slaughtered between 4 to 7 days of age, and I knew that it would be a highly unpleasant process, but I didn't realise that they were being abused to quite that extent.
She knows she can't save them all, but she can save some. Have they got names?
Yes, all of them have got names.
Do they know their names yet?
Yes, they do know their names.
Can you show me?
I can try. That's Faith. This one over here is Gabrielle, and at the back, Hope. Come on, Hope. Come on. Come have your milk.
How long did it take you to teach Hope?
Her name?
Her name?
Few days. They all know their name. Yeah.
I just saw cows stood around in a field and mooed.
No, they're very, very complex creatures.
Do you accept that?
Absolutely, yes. Cows can learn the sight of all their herd mates. They can do much more than we think they can, because we don't usually give them the opportunity to display their intelligence.
Hey, Luca.
And to Lindley, that intelligence means the animals will suffer all the more.
And just no level of care shown to the animal. It's just treated as an object. That's how I have seen farmers treat their cows.
Of course, the farmers would say, well, that's because we're in the food business. We have, hundreds of stock, and we can't cuddle everyone.
That's entirely true, which is probably a point that needs to be raised. Why are we abusing animals to this extent in such large numbers?
In order to record the short life cycle of these calves, FarmWatch tracks some of the trucks to a slaughterhouse, Down Cow Limited in Te Kōwhata. These calves are bound for pet food. To check out the calves' treatment inside, FarmWatch rigged hidden cameras. We showed the footage to animal behaviour expert Professor Clive Phillips. Now look, calves being thrown in.
Yeah.
Your response to that?
Well, I was just interested there. You saw that calf attempting to get up. There she goes again, attempting to get up, but other calves are thrown on top of her. And eventually she's managed to get to her feet. But these calves, they really don't know what's going on.
We can't show you the worst of it, but amidst the kicking, the throwing of live animals, and even bashing on the head, there comes one extraordinary act of compassion, not from a worker, but a calf. A newborn calf stops to lick another injured animal until it gets up.
Cattle are very social animals, and that's not surprising because genetically these calves are probably related, and they work on the basis if I help you, you'll help me at some future state.
In Hans Creek's opinion, there should be a prosecution.
The slaughter footage is just beyond anything I've actually ever seen.
And Hans Creek has seen a lot. Today he heads the animal rights group SAFE, but he used to be an SPCA inspector.
It clearly shows these animals being abused. You see him kicking young cows in the face. You see him shoving them around. These animals are thrown from quite a height, smack bang onto that concrete. That's just not acceptable. The moment we saw that footage, we realized that there was a serious problem happening, especially at the slaughterhouse. So a complaint was made to MPI, and to date we haven't heard back from them. So this is now about 2 months ago.
And what about the slaughterhouse itself? Well, we approached Down Cow owner Alan Cleaver to get his reaction to SAFE's complaint to the Ministry of Primary Industries about the actions of some of his workers.
Have MPI not got back to you? Because they told us that they showed all this stuff to MPI Live 2 months ago.
No.
Alan Cleaver claimed he'd heard nothing about the video and was surprised by the accusations.
I've seen the footage. And I find some parts of it disappointing, and I recognise that people who have watched that footage will find some of it distressing.
Matt Stone from the Ministry of Primary Industries, it's their job to enforce animal welfare laws industry-wide.
SAFE claim that they made that footage available 2 months ago. They've heard nothing back. Is that correct?
We have initiated an investigation, and I'm not going to comment further on our processes around that investigation.
How long ago did you initiate the investigation?
I'm not going to comment on our processes associated with the investigation.
But you can surely give me the time as to when you initiated the investigation.
I'm not going to comment on any of the processes associated with this investigation.
All right, then I have to say that we've spoken to the owner of the company, and he's surprised. He says he hasn't been contacted by MPI, so he's chosen to comment. Is this correct?
I think, again, I'm just going to reiterate that I'm not going to comment on the processes associated with this investigation.
As an industry, we need to get together fast to sort this out, because if things have been raised to MPI, they have an obligation to do something about it.
When it comes to New Zealand dairy, there's nothing bigger than Fonterra. Miles Hurrell is Group Director, Cooperative Affairs.
And the examples that I've worked with MPI in the past have been very proactive. So in this case, we need to work with them to resolve it, because the footage I've seen is disgusting in that regard.
Far from being placated, the activists are planning to hit the industry where it hurts most.
Given the fact that 95% of dairy is exported overseas, we will be talking to international consumers and show them how their dairy is produced. And we want to see how consumers are going to react when they find out the cruelty behind New Zealand dairy industry.
Yeah, pretty disappointed if that's how the dairy industry is going to be portrayed.
You say portrayed, but do you accept that that's how it is?
No, I don't. I mean, I think it's a very small minority of how the dairy industry in New Zealand operate. I mean, we have the vast majority of our farmers operate responsibly, and this is really sad to see this footage come to light.
You say a small minority, but they did film right across the Waikato, and they said everywhere they went, they saw cruelty. It doesn't sound small.
No, it doesn't sound small the way you outline all that, but let's talk to safety, let's understand what they have got, let's understand the farmers they went to, and we'll come down on them, because that's not great. MPI have a responsibility to step up and do something about this, and we'll work very closely with MPI to ensure they do.
If a bunch of enthusiasts with a camera managed to pick all that up, whereas a main player in a $15 billion industry didn't. What went wrong for Fonterra?
The whole industry needs to take a look at itself in this case. We have MPI as the regulator. We need to work very closely with them. We have the meat industry, the transport operators, the Dairy Company Association of New Zealand, and of course the RNZ that work very closely with our farmers. I think we all need to work together on this to get it sorted.
Could this be a PR disaster for you?
Well, I think it's pretty disappointing that if that's the way they're approaching it. I mean, we have an opportunity here in New Zealand Inc. to get together. If we've got issues across New Zealand Inc. and the dairy sector, let's get out and solve it without going off to the international markets to talk about it. As I say, very disappointing we're at this point.
Well, you say get together, are you going to talk to them?
Yeah, we will. We've tried to reach out to SAFE since we got the footage yesterday. They're wanting to wait for this footage to be filmed, and hopefully we'll engage with them next week. But we're absolutely keen to talk to them and try and resolve it.
What would you say to them?
That we've acknowledged it. I mean, you can't hide behind the fact of what we're seeing. I mean, as I say, it's very disappointing what the footage we've picked up on. We need to fix it, and the industry needs to take some responsibility to resolve this at the highest level.
But to animal rights campaigners, the problem isn't just the illegal practices, it's the legal ones too.
Do you accept that calf separation is cruel to the mother?
Yeah, but there are ways to do that. I mean, there are guidelines in place that are the most humane way to do that. I recognise that it's not easy, and it could be seen as a cruel practice, but it's the way. There are processes in place, guidelines in place to ensure that it's the most humane way.
Is there a problem though, that the customers could go, yeah, we hear you, but actually we don't like to see 2 million bobby calves killed just so I can have a glass of milk. Maybe we'll go for something non-dairy. How would you counter that?
Yeah, I mean, there will always be that risk, I suspect, but I mean, it's a nutritious product. The benefits of dairy are well known to everybody, and I think that far outweighs the practices of actually getting that milk.
So while the killing of the bobby calves continues, there seems little sign of retreat from SAFE or FarmWatch. They've told Sunday their footage will go worldwide.
New Zealanders could answer, you're being unpatriotic, because what you're going to do, potentially, is undermine our economy.
Well, New Zealand claims that we have the highest animal welfare in the world. So if this is our highest animal welfare, well then let's show the rest of the world and be proud of it. And if it's not, if we're not that proud of it, then maybe we need to do something about it.
Well, if you'd like to have your say on our story, join us on Facebook and Twitter Sunday TVNZ.
Okay. So the effects that I've heard about, and there could be more, but there was an advert placed in the Guardian, that's a big newspaper in the UK, a full-page ad exposing the situation. So these animal rights organizations are spending money. And then here in New Zealand, there was a petition circulating, signed by thousands of persons, that calling for the removal of the charitable status for all these animal rights groups because they're committing treason, they're attacking the economy. It's un-New Zealand-like. So they should have their, just like our legal entities have charitable status. Petition was calling for the charitable status of these organizations behind this expose. It should be revoked. How dare you affect the livelihood? In The Guardian, the UK newspaper, the New Zealand government, of course, said that they'll look into all these disappointing incidents which we feel are not indicative of the whole dairy industry. But as far as separating the calves from their mothers, that's just a reality. In other words, you want the nutritious food, don't worry about the rest. It's a reality. Those of you who don't know much about cows and calves, again, keep in mind, you're looking at calves that at most were just a few days old. What you saw, most of them were, they're scooped up by the farmers the next day in the morning because they're born at night. And they're thrown into these metal crates outside the farm's boundaries where a truck comes and picks them up. What you didn't see, what was edited out of the slaughterhouse scenes, when the guy was clubbing the calves rather, you remember that? After he clubbed them, he'd take a knife and slit the throat. So we didn't want to show that one. Again and again, he would club the calves in the head and then slit the calf's throat. You'd see the blood gushing out of the calf's mouth and out of the throat. So our point is that how can you expect peace in the world when this is going on? So Srila Prabhupada states that European and American society will be finished on account of this sinful activity of killing the cows. Krishna purposely became a cowherd boy to show personally cow protection, Go Raksha. His childhood, his boyhood, he's personally teaching, so we should follow. Go Raksha, protecting the cows, is not simply religious sentiment, but a means to secure the highest benefit for human society. We take it seriously because Krishna says. Krishna is our authority. We want to follow his personal behavior and instruction. So I hope that you were impressed by the intensity and dedication of these non-bhakti practitioners to such a cause, which is, we would say it's our cause, it's so dear to us, and yet they're so impassioned about it and applying their intelligence. As for how each one of you is going to deal with the situation, I leave that up to you. It's an individual choice. But we should be aware that even in the non-devotee world, persons are taking this issue so seriously. In a situation in which you may feel there are not many options, at least we shouldn't be callous and insensitive and covering our eyes to avoid seeing the problem. And trying to come up with a solution according to our own individual response. So again, because this is an international society, we can move resources here and there, so we send some manpower to the Gita Nagari project because Srila Prabhupada, he personally championed that project. We want to preserve his legacy, preserve what he did. And of course, we have our local private enterprises of cow protection. That's very nice. So I don't think we need to discuss this anymore. Oh, sorry, Sheshu. Do you have a microphone? Can you give him? No, we give him.
Well, I'm just wondering.
They will give you the microphone.
Maj, you've generally outlined what could be considered a personal response to this by all of us. But is there a ISKCON society response? Is there an appropriate ISKCON society response? Would that response be sharing financial resources to help with this? Or just public statements in support for the work that SAFE and Farm Watch are doing? Personnel being involved in some of their operations? Money being given to their operations? Is there any obligation that ISKCON has on those kind of levels to respond to something like this?
Yes, the past month I've been discussing the situation with the ISKCON Minister of Communications, Anutama Prabhu, and I've asked Vishnu Maya, Devi Dasi, to look into how we can, in any kind of way, liaison with such groups and help to champion the cause, which we say is our cause. Giving them credit for the great work that they've done. So we are looking into that. As far as a ISKCON society-wide response, there are some GBCs who feel very strongly about this, as I said, enough to go through the austerity of abstaining from milk products from unprotected cows. And we've brought this point up to the entire GBC body, but it's taking a while. Such a presentation like this really helps. So the Minister of Communications has asked me to proliferate this because to date I haven't seen such an effective presentation. You saw the government official, the government minister giving the typical bureaucratic response. Very insightful. you saw the representative from the Fonterra. I'll explain to you. Fonterra is the biggest, by far, centralized dairy in New Zealand. They're basically the monopoly, right?
Yeah.
Yes. But so he was more artful in his communication. I'm very disappointed to see this, and we're going to get on it right away. I'm sure the government will do all it can, and but just remember, this is in no way indicative of the entire dairy industry. I would hate that people would consider that this is the way it is across the board. He was pretty good representing his commercial interests. So yes, I agree with you that there needs to be a ISKCON society-wide response to this. So, besides, you're suggesting besides the personal response, yes, we are looking into ways that we can hook up with such work done by Farm Safe and Farm Watch. And I've been trying to find out if they have any kind of posters or flyers or other kinds of publicity, written publicity, but so far it seems it's just on the net. It's just on the internet, which of course is a prime means of publicizing things these days. But I was hoping there would be some kind of posters and banners or whatever that we could put in our outreach centers that we support this. At our outreach centers, we do have signs up. Well, I know in Auckland at the Loft. Also, in Bhakti Lounge, is there a sign telling everyone that all our milk comes from protected cows?
No.
Well, that's a great lack. There's one there at the Loft. So besides the sign saying all the milk we use comes from protected cows, I was hoping to get some kind of posters or something from these organizations. It's Christmas time, but right now it's probably December means it's like the 4th of July in the USA, everything just shuts down. It doesn't really get going till mid-January at the earliest. Any other suggestions what we can do? No, I'm speaking to Shesha.
Well, I think the raising awareness among devotees is, I think raising awareness amongst the devotees, and as you say, pointing out that others are very passionate about issues which we also share. I think that's important to do. In our ethics course at Bhaktivedanta College, we have a exercise with the students that ask the same questions I just asked you concerning factory farming and cruelty to animals, and what should ISKCON's response be? Money, men, verbal support, whatever. So, in that we try to raise awareness of these issues as well. So it's on a small scale because it's small college, but raising awareness, I think, is important.
I sent the link and explanation of this newscast to some leaders. I sent immediately to His Holiness Shivaram Maharaj, and sent me back an email message all in caps. I've immediately sent this to all the centers in Hungary. I'm immediately talking about this on my podcast. And then his associate, Bibi Govinda Maharaj, got a hold of it, the email I sent, and he looked at the video and said, that's it for him. He said, no more milk for him from unprotected cows. So it is quite an effective newscast. You know, it's just 17 minutes. Very well done. You have the cow expert there, analyzing everything. This shows this and this shows that. And you can see he was visibly moved. And you saw the lady newscaster at the end. She's showing emotion. We've become so dull. When I say we, I mean human beings in general. We just really don't make connections anymore. The brain, the intelligence is so splayed out and distracted. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bahu Shaka Hinantascha Buddhayo Vivasayana. The intelligence is so splayed and scattered in so many directions, which makes it easy to manipulate people. Whereas the bhakti process creates one-pointed intelligence. So we'll end this discussion now. This discussion is an example of how we're demonstrating that Bhagavad Gita can correct human society from so many angles: economic angle, political angle, ecological angle, psychological angle, all different angles. Bhagavad Gita has complete application. It is not religious sentiment. So please think about this and respond in your individual ways. And yes, as Shesha Prabhu was saying, we should look into ways that we can respond organizationally. And we have to credit those persons who made this expose and tell them, well done, we're behind you. All right. Thank you. Hare Krishna.